I don't know when it started, this gnawing feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. At first, I thought it was just paranoia, you know? Maybe I was overthinking things because work had been slow for me lately and I had too much time on my hands. But as the days turned into weeks, it became harder to ignore. My wife, Emily, wasn't the same. Not with me, not at home, not even in the little routines that had once made us. She started staying late at work, more often than not. She's in marketing, a high-stress field, so I understood the occasional late night. But it became a pattern, a frustratingly consistent one. Her excuses were always airtight. "We're finalizing the campaign," or "My boss, Mr. Collins, wants the presentation perfect before tomorrow." Mr. Collins. That name started to leave a bitter taste in my mouth. I didn't even know the guy, but the way she spoke about him, it was different. It wasn't just respect or admiration. It was almost like reverence. And then there were the secretive phone calls. Emily would step into the hallway or out onto the porch when her phone buzzed, her voice dropping just low enough that I couldn't make out the words. Whenever I asked, she'd wave it off. "Work stuff, honey," she'd say, planting a quick kiss on my cheek before disappearing into another room. But the kiss wasn't the same anymore. It felt rushed, like a chore she had to check off her list. Her distance wasn't just emotional, it was physical too. The woman who once leaned into my shoulder during movie nights now sat at the edge of the couch, engrossed in her phone. The warmth that had been a constant in our marriage was slowly being replaced by an invisible wall, one that I couldn't climb no matter how hard I tried. I remember one evening vividly. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I asked her how her day went. She lit up, her eyes sparkling as she talked about a new project. But the way she said it, "Mr. Collins had this brilliant idea," made my stomach churn. I forced a smile, nodding as if I cared about her boss's brilliance. Deep down, I knew I was losing her to something or someone I couldn't see. Still, I told myself it was all in my head. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe I was projecting my own frustrations about work onto her. I even blamed myself for not being the exciting husband she deserved. But then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. Emily was out running errands, and I was tidying up around the house when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. We'd always had this unspoken rule about privacy, but something compelled me. An instinct I couldn't ignore. I picked up the phone and glanced at the screen. It was a message from Alpha Collins. My blood ran cold. I didn't open the message immediately. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to put the phone down and take a deep breath. Then I tapped on the screen. "Can't wait to see you Monday. You looked stunning yesterday, as always." My heart sank. Stunning? Yesterday? She'd told me she was working late in the office, yet here was her boss, complimenting her like they were on a date. I didn't know whether to feel angry, betrayed, or just stupid for not seeing it sooner. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I spent the rest of the day in a haze, replaying every interaction we'd had over the past few weeks. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, and the picture they painted was one I didn't want to see. My wife, the woman I'd built a life with, shared dreams with, was slipping away from me. And the worst part? She didn't even seem to notice. That night, as she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I sat across from her, studying her face. I wanted to scream, to ask her why, to beg her to tell me I was wrong. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled and asked if she wanted tea. Because sometimes, when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, you need a moment to steady yourself before deciding whether to jump or pull back. I wasn't ready to jump. Not yet. Sunday morning came, and I woke up before Emily. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, the weight of yesterday's discovery pressing down on me. Alpha Collins. I kept repeating the name in my head, like a mantra that made me angrier with each repetition. It felt so ridiculous, like something out of a bad soap opera. But this wasn't fiction. This was my life. And somehow, my wife was at the center of it with him. She was still asleep when I got up, her phone lying on the bedside table, screen down. I glanced at it, that same instinct from the day before gnawing at me. I didn't want to be the guy who snoops through his wife's phone, but what choice did I have now? She'd crossed a line, and I needed answers. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling again. The lock screen stared back at me, mocking my hesitation. But then I remembered something. Emily once mentioned that she used my birthday as her passcode because it was easy to remember. The irony wasn't lost on me as I keyed in those 4 digits and watched the phone unlock. My stomach churned as I scrolled through her messages. Most of them were innocent enough. Chats with her friends, reminders from her mom. But then I found the thread with Alpha Collins. I opened it, and there it was. Everything I'd been afraid of, spelled out in cold, unfeeling text. Last night was amazing. I love how you laugh when you're with me. Don't let him make you feel guilty. You deserve better. Counting the days until I can hold you again. Each message felt like a dagger, twisting deeper with every word. I could practically hear his smug, condescending tone in my head. And Emily, my Emily, was replying with hearts and smiling emojis, like a love-struck teenager. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My hands were gripping the phone so tightly that I thought I might crush it. My mind raced, trying to process what I was reading. Was this really happening? Was my wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, having an affair with her boss? And then I saw it. A photo. I almost didn't want to open it, but my finger moved before I could stop myself. It was a picture of them, taken in what looked like a fancy restaurant. She was dressed in the same outfit she'd worn on one of her supposed late nights at work. Her smile was radiant, but it wasn't for me. It was for him. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the texts or the photo. It was everything. The lies, the secrecy, the way she'd slowly pulled away from me without even giving me a chance to fight for her. And then there was him, this so-called alpha, who thought he could walk into my wife's life and take what didn't belong to him. I put the phone down, my head in my hands. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, humiliation. I wanted to wake her up, to demand an explanation, to make her look me in the eye and tell me why. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed time to think, to figure out what I was going to do. When Emily finally woke up, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "Morning, honey," she said, her voice warm and cheerful. I stared at her, wondering how she could act so normal when she was hiding something so devastating. Part of me wanted to call her out right then and there, but another part of me wanted to wait, to gather more evidence, to make sure I wasn't missing anything. So I played along. I kissed her on the forehead, made her breakfast, and pretended like everything was fine. But inside, I was falling apart. Every time she smiled at me, I wondered if she was thinking about him. Every time her phone buzzed, I wondered if it was another message from her so-called alpha. By the end of the day, I had made up my mind. I couldn't ignore this any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them from her. But this wasn't going to be a screaming match or a rushed confrontation. No, I wanted to hear her say it. I wanted her to admit what she had done and look me in the eyes when she did it. That night, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I turned to her and said, "Emily, we need to talk." She froze, her hand halfway to the popcorn bowl. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice cautious. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I know about you and Collins." Her face turned pale, and for a moment she didn't say anything. Then she laughed nervously. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out her phone, showing her the messages and the photo. "This," I said, my voice low and steady. "This is what I'm talking about." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in them. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. And in that moment, I knew I had her. The room was dead silent. Emily just sat there, her face pale and her mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't believe I'd actually confronted her. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the weight of the evidence sink in. Her phone was still in my hand, the messages staring back at both of us like the undeniable truth they were. "You're not even going to deny it, are you?" I finally said, my voice calm but trembling slightly at the edges. She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. "Not what it looks like?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Emily, I read the messages. I saw the picture. Don't insult me by pretending there's some innocent explanation for this." She finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with something that wasn't guilt. It was defiance. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms. "Yes, I've been spending time with Collins, but it's not like I planned for this to happen. It just did. It just did." Those words hit me harder than any punch ever could, as if cheating on your husband was something that could just happen, like tripping over a crack in the sidewalk. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing my temper wouldn't solve anything. "So, what?" I asked, my voice cold. "You accidentally fell into his arms? Accidentally let him call you stunning and tell you that you deserve better? Is that how it works?" She flinched but didn't back down. "You don't understand," she said, her tone defensive. "He makes me feel appreciated. He listens to me. He—" "Don't," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare finish that sentence, because whatever he does for you, it doesn't justify what you've done to me. To us." Her expression softened for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she would apologize. But then, her defenses went back up. "Maybe if you'd been more present," she snapped, "I wouldn't have needed someone else to make me feel special." That was it. The floodgates opened, and all the anger I'd been holding back came rushing out. "Are you kidding me?" I said, standing up. "I've been here, Emily. Every single day, I've been here trying to be the best husband I can be. But apparently, that's not good enough for you because your boss decided to play the role of the alpha male. And you fell for it." She stood up too, her eyes blazing. "You think this is easy for me?" she shot back. "Do you have any idea how lonely I've felt? How much pressure I'm under at work? Collins understands that. He supports me in ways you never have." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, he supports you, does he? I'm sure that's what he tells every woman he's sleeping with. You think you're special, Emily? To him, you're just another conquest." Her face turned red, whether from anger or shame, I couldn't tell. "You don't know him," she said through gritted teeth. "And I don't need to," I replied. "I know enough. I know he's a coward who preys on women who are too blind to see through his act, and I know that you let him." We stood there, facing off like two boxers in the ring. I was angry, hurt, and disgusted all at once. But more than anything, I was disappointed. Disappointed in her, in our marriage, and in myself for not seeing this coming. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice low and steady. "You're going to end this. Today. You're going to tell him it's over, and you're going to cut all contact with him. If you don't, you can pack your bags and leave because I'm not going to share my wife with another man." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't get to tell me what to do." "Oh, I think I do," I shot back. "Because the moment you decided to cheat on me, you forfeited the right to play the victim. So, it's your choice, Emily. Him or me." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat back down on the couch, her face unreadable. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "I need time to think." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Time to think? You've had plenty of time to think while sneaking around behind my back. But fine. Take your time. Just know that my patience is running out." I turned and walked out of the room, my hands still shaking. Part of me wanted to believe she'd choose me, that our marriage could be saved. But another part of me, the part that had read those texts and seen that photo, wasn't so sure. I wasn't going to wait forever. If she didn't make her choice soon, I was prepared to make it for her. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of our argument. Him or me. It felt like a line from a movie, dramatic and cliched, but it was the only way I could put it. The ball was in her court now, and I hated that. I hated giving her the power to decide whether our marriage lived or died. The next morning, she left for work without saying much. Just a quick, awkward goodbye before slipping out the door. I watched her drive off, my chest heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. I told myself I'd give her time, like I promised. But the hours dragged on, and with every passing minute, my anger simmered. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. Sitting around, waiting for her to make a decision, it felt like torture. I needed to do something. And so, against my better judgment, I got in my car and drove to her office. The building was sleek and modern, all glass windows and polished steel. I parked in a visitor's spot and sat there for a few minutes, trying to calm myself. Part of me wanted to turn around and go home. Barging into her workplace wasn't exactly a smart move. But then I thought about Alpha Collins and all the smug, patronizing things he'd probably said to her, about me, about our marriage. And my resolve hardened. I walked into the lobby, trying to look calm and collected. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile, and I asked to see Mr. Collins. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions, just picked up the phone and dialed. After a brief conversation, she nodded and told me to head to the second floor. His office was at the end of a long hallway, the door wide open. As I approached, I could see him sitting at his desk, typing on his computer. He looked exactly like I'd imagined. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of guy who thought the world owed him something just because he existed. "Mr. Collins?" I said, stepping into the room. He looked up, surprised, and then his expression shifted to one of smug amusement. "You must be Emily's husband," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I was wondering when I'd get to meet you." The way he said it, so casual, like he'd been expecting me, it made my blood boil. "We need to talk," I said, my voice tight. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, have a seat." I ignored the chair and stayed standing. "I know about you and Emily," I said, cutting straight to the point. "And I'm here to tell you it ends now." He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Is that so?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "Whatever you think you have with her, it's over. She's my wife, and you need to stay away from her." He chuckled, a low, condescending sound that made my fists clench. "Look," he said, leaning forward. "I get it. This must be hard for you. But Emily's a grown woman. She makes her own decisions. If she wants to be with me, that's her choice." "Her choice," I repeated, my voice rising. "You manipulated her. You took advantage of her stress, her vulnerabilities. That's not a choice. That's coercion." He stood up then, his smile fading. "Let me make something clear," he said, his tone colder now. "Emily came to me, not the other way around. And if she's unhappy in your marriage, that's not my problem. Maybe you should look in the mirror before blaming me." I took a step closer, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Listen to me," I said, my voice low and steady. "I'm only going to say this once. Stay away from my wife or you'll regret it." He smirked, clearly unfazed by my warning. "Are you threatening me?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery. It's not a threat, I said. It's a promise. For a moment, we just stood there, staring each other down. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I didn't back down. Eventually, he shrugged and sat back down in his chair. I'll tell you what, he said, his tone light again. I'll give Emily some space to figure out what she wants, but don't think for a second that you can intimidate me. I don't scare easily. I didn't bother responding. There was nothing more to say. I turned and walked out of his office, my fists still clenched, my jaw tight. As I drove home, I replayed the conversation in my head, kicking myself for not doing more. But I also knew this wasn't over. Collins wasn't the type to back down, and neither was I. I thought I'd made myself clear when I left his office. I thought my warning, even if he'd laughed it off, would at least make him think twice before pulling any more stunts. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. It was a quiet evening at home. Emily and I had barely spoken since she came back from work. She'd been avoiding me, and honestly, I was fine with that. The air between us was thick with tension, words unsaid hanging like a storm cloud. I was sitting in the living room, nursing a glass of water and flipping through TV channels, more for the noise than anything else. Then the doorbell rang. At first I thought it was one of the neighbors, maybe dropping off mail delivered to the wrong address. I wasn't expecting anyone. Emily was in the kitchen and she didn't move. So I sighed, got up, and headed to the door. When I opened it, my breath caught in my chest. Standing there, smug as ever, was Collins. He was wearing his usual tailored suit, but there was something more menacing about him now. He had that same cocky smirk on his face, as if showing up uninvited to another man's house was completely normal. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low, barely keeping my anger in check. He didn't even flinch. He brushed past me, stepping into my house without so much as an invitation. "Relax," he said, casually looking around like he was inspecting the place. "I thought we could have a little chat, man to man." "Get out," I said, my voice firm this time. "Not until we settle a few things," he replied, turning to face me. His smirk was gone now, replaced by a cold, calculating expression that made my skin crawl. "You see, you came into my office yesterday threatening me. I didn't appreciate that." I clenched my fists, my jaw tightening. "And yet here you are, proving my point about being a smug, arrogant—" "Careful," he interrupted, his tone sharp. "You're already in over your head. Let me make something clear. Emily is with me because she wants to be. You can yell, threaten, or throw tantrums all you want, but you can't change that." His words hit like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong, but the confidence in his voice shook me. Before I could respond, Emily walked into the room. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and she froze. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a mixture of shock and nervousness. "Just having a conversation with your husband," he said smoothly, his demeanor shifting to something almost charming. "It seems he's having a hard time understanding the situation." Emily looked at me, then back at him, her face pale. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "Why not?" he asked, stepping closer to her. "I'm just trying to clear the air. Isn't that what you wanted? Honesty?" That was it. I'd had enough. I stepped between them, my body tense, my voice shaking with rage. I said, "Get out." Collins looked at me, his smirk returning. "Or what?" he asked, leaning in slightly, daring me to make a move. And then it happened. Without warning, he slapped me. A hard, stinging slap that echoed through the room. For a moment, I just stood there, stunned. Emily gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Collins didn't even flinch. He just stood there, looking at me like I was beneath him. "You don't deserve her," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're weak, pathetic. No wonder she came to me." Time seemed to slow down. The room blurred, and all I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My vision tunneled on him, his smug face, his arrogant posture. He had crossed the line, not just as a man, but as a human being. He had come into my home, insulted me, disrespected me, and now he'd laid hands on me. Something snapped inside me. A lifetime of patience, restraint, and compromise crumbled in an instant. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just moved. My hand shot out, grabbing his arm before he could step back. His smirk faltered, replaced by surprise and then fear as I twisted his wrist. "You think you can come into my house, insult me and walk away?" I growled, my voice low and dangerous. He tried to pull away, but I didn't let go. With a surge of strength I didn't know I had, I forced him down, twisting his arm until I heard the sickening crack of bone. He screamed, a high-pitched, panicked sound that only fueled my anger. I let go, and he stumbled back, clutching his now useless hand, his face pale with pain. Emily screamed, rushing forward, but I stopped her with a look. "Stay back," I said, my voice cold. Collins looked at me, his bravado gone, replaced by fear. "You're insane," he spat, cradling his broken hand. "You'll pay for this." "Get out of my house," I said, stepping toward him. "And if I ever see you again, you'll leave with more than a broken hand." He didn't argue. He staggered to the door, throwing one last glare over his shoulder before disappearing into the night. I turned to Emily, who was staring at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. "This ends now," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "You decide tonight, Emily, him or me." And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing in the wreckage of everything we'd built. When Collins finally limped out of my house, clutching his broken hand like the coward he truly was, I didn't feel the relief I expected. Instead, there was a strange stillness. The air felt heavier, as if the weight of everything that had happened was pressing down on me. I stood in the living room for a moment, staring at the door he'd just slammed behind him. My chest heaved with deep, uneven breaths, but my mind was eerily calm. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was the one in control. Emily stood a few feet away, frozen. Her hands were clasped over her mouth, and her wide eyes darted between me and the door. It was almost as if she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize myself either. "You broke his hand," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I turned to her, my face unreadable. "What did you expect me to do, Emily? Let him walk in here, slap me, insult me, and leave like nothing happened?" My voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of everything I was feeling. Anger, hurt, betrayal. She shook her head, her hands trembling. I didn't think you'd do that." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Of course you didn't, because you've spent the last few weeks convincing yourself that I'm weak, that I'm the lesser man compared to your alpha boss. Isn't that what he told you? That I don't deserve you?" She didn't answer, and her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I took a step closer to her, my voice hardening. "You let him into our lives, Emily. You let him come between us. And when he showed up here, in our house, you didn't even try to stop him. You just stood there watching while he disrespected me, while he slapped me. So don't you dare act shocked now that I stood up for myself." Her lower lip trembled, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then her expression hardened, and she crossed her arms. "You didn't have to break his hand," she snapped, her voice rising. "You've turned this into something even worse." "Worse?" I shot back, my anger flaring again. "You think I made this worse? Let me remind you, Emily. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who brought him into our lives. I'm just cleaning up the mess you made." The words hit her like a slap, and she recoiled, her face pale. I almost felt bad for a second. Almost. But then I remembered the texts, the late nights, the lies. Whatever guilt I felt was drowned out by the memory of how she had betrayed me. "You need to make a decision," I said, my voice calmer now, but no less firm. "I've already told you, him or me, and I'm not waiting any longer. If you want to be with him, fine. Pack your things and go. But if you choose to stay, this ends. No more contact with him, no more lies, no more excuses." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, she sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "I need time," she murmured, her voice muffled. I let out a sharp breath, running a hand through my hair. "You've had time, Emily. Weeks of it. I've been sitting here, waiting, hoping you'd come to your senses. But all you've done is push me further away. So, no, you don't get more time. You make your choice tonight or I'll make it for you." I walked out of the living room, leaving her sitting there in stunned silence. My heart was pounding and my hands were still shaking from the confrontation. Part of me wanted to give in, to let her take all the time she needed. But another part of me, the part that had been humiliated, disrespected, and hurt, knew that time wasn't the answer. She had to face the consequences of her actions, just like I had to face the reality of what our marriage had become. I went to our bedroom and shut the door, leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath. My reflection in the mirror across the room caught my eye. I looked different, tired, angry, a little broken. But there was something else, too. Strength. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself. The night dragged on. I could hear Emily pacing in the living room, occasionally muttering to herself. I didn't go out there, and she didn't come to me. We were in a stalemate, both of us trying to figure out what came next. But deep down, I already knew. The choice she made tonight would determine the rest of our lives. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. I wasn't surprised. Emily had barely slept the night before. I could hear her pacing until the early hours. Part of me had hoped that when I got up, she'd already have made a decision, one way or the other. But when I walked into the kitchen, she was sitting at the table, staring into a cold cup of coffee, looking as though she hadn't moved in hours. She didn't look up when I entered. I grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching her. I could tell she hadn't slept. Her hair was messy, her face pale, and her eyes red. Guilt or exhaustion? I couldn't tell. "So?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. She flinched, her hands gripping the mug tighter. "So what?" she mumbled without looking at me. "You know what?" I said, my voice steady. "Have you made your choice?" Her shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I set the glass down a little harder than I intended. "What's there to think about, Emily? You've been living two lives, and now it's time to pick one. Him or me." She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with tears. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," I shot back, my voice rising. "You made it complicated when you let him into our lives. You chose to cheat. You chose to betray me. And now you're telling me you're stuck in some kind of moral gray area? Come on, Emily, be honest. If you want to be with him, just say it." Her face crumpled and the tears started to fall. I hated seeing her like this, but I couldn't let myself soften. Not this time. She needed to face the consequences of what she'd done. "I don't want to lose you," she said finally, her voice trembling. "But I don't know if we can come back from this." That hit me harder than I expected. I had braced myself for anger, for excuses, even for her choosing him. But this, her doubt, her hesitation, cut deeper than any of that. It felt like she was dangling our marriage over a cliff, unsure whether to save it or let it fall. "I can't make that decision for you," I said, my voice quieter now. But I'll tell you this, I'm not going to wait around forever. If you want to fix this, if you want to fix us, then you need to let him go. Completely. No contact, no excuses, no lingering feelings. Otherwise, we're done. She nodded slowly, but I wasn't convinced. Words were easy, actions were harder, and I'd already seen how far her actions had taken her away from me. The rest of the day passed in a tense, uneasy silence. I busied myself with household tasks, anything to keep my mind off the mess we were in. Emily stayed in the bedroom for most of the day, and I let her. She needed space to figure things out, and honestly, so did I. But by evening, my patience was wearing thin. As I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, I heard the bedroom door open. Emily walked into the living room, her face pale but resolute. She sat down across from me, folding her hands in her lap. "I ended it," she said, her voice steady. I raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to believe her. "Just like that?" She nodded. "I called him. I told him it was over and that I didn't want any more contact with him. I blocked his number. He tried to argue, but I didn't let him. It's done." I studied her face, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She seemed sincere, but a part of me still struggled to trust her. After everything that had happened, how could I be sure this wasn't just another lie? "And what about us?" I asked. She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. "I don't know," she admitted. "I want to fix things, but I don't know how. I've hurt you so much, and I don't even know if you'll ever forgive me." Her honesty took me by surprise. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't defensive or evasive. She was just vulnerable. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it was a start. "I don't know if I can forgive you either," I said honestly. "But I'm willing to try, as long as you're willing to do the work." She nodded, tears filling her eyes again. "I am," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could rebuild what had been broken, but I also knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust, once shattered, doesn't come back overnight. For now, though, it was enough. Enough to take the first step. Enough to keep going one day at a time. The days that followed were anything but easy. After Emily told me she'd ended things with Collins, I wanted to believe her. I really did. But trust isn't something you can just snap back into place. It's like a mirror. Once it's cracked, you can glue the pieces together, but it'll never be the same again. And every time I looked at her, all I could see were the cracks. She stayed true to her word, though. She blocked his number, deleted his messages, even quit her job to sever all ties with him. That last one caught me off guard. Emily had always been passionate about her career, and leaving it behind was a big deal for her. When she told me, I just nodded, trying to process what it meant. Was it a genuine act of repentance, or was it just guilt pushing her to extremes? Either way, it was something. The first week was the hardest. We barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was awkward and strained. I could tell she was walking on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing. And me? I was angry. Not the fiery, shouting kind of anger. No, this was the quiet, simmering kind that sits in your chest and refuses to leave. I didn't yell or lash out, but every now and then, I'd catch myself throwing sharp comments her way, little jabs that I knew would hurt. "You're awfully quiet," I said one evening as we sat at the dinner table. "Thinking about him?" Her fork froze mid-air, and she looked up at me with wide eyes. "No," she said quickly, her voice soft. "I'm thinking about us, about how to fix this." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But a part of me couldn't help wondering if she was still thinking about him, about all the moments they'd shared behind my back. The thought made my stomach churn. But as the days turned into weeks, something shifted. Slowly, tentatively, Emily started trying to rebuild what we'd lost. She cooked my favorite meals, planned little outings for us, even brought home a book on marriage counseling. At first, I brushed off her efforts, too wrapped up in my own hurt to care. But over time, I started to see how hard she was trying. One night, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, she turned to me and said, "I know I've hurt you more than I can ever make up for. But I'm not giving up on us. Even if it takes the rest of my life, I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness." Her words caught me off guard. For the first time, I saw the pain in her eyes. The pain of someone who knew they'd made a terrible mistake and was desperate to make things right. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it softened something inside me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. We started going to counseling together. I wasn't thrilled about the idea at first, but I knew we couldn't fix this on our own. The sessions were tough. Sitting there, airing out all the hurt and anger in front of a stranger, it wasn't easy. But it was necessary. The counselor didn't take sides, didn't try to sugarcoat things. She made us face the hard truths about our marriage and ourselves. One day, during a particularly emotional session, Emily broke down. "I don't know why I let it happen," she sobbed. "I was lonely, and he made me feel wanted, but it wasn't real. It was selfish and stupid, and I hate myself for what I did to you." Her tears were raw, unfiltered. For the first time, I saw just how deeply she regretted her actions. And as much as I wanted to hold on to my anger, I couldn't. Seeing her like that, so broken and vulnerable, reminded me of the woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I still loved, despite everything. It didn't happen overnight, but slowly, I began to let go of the anger. We started talking more, laughing more, finding little pieces of joy in the wreckage of our marriage. It wasn't perfect, and it probably never would be, but it was progress. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching